Hello, my name is Fenlon Lamb. Welcome to our production of Mozart and Salieri. My concept for this production started with reading the libretto and recognizing that Mozart and Salieri were in fact friends. So where do you put these murderous, poisonous thoughts? And I thought the perfect place to go is into Salieri's mind.
By the time that Rimsky-Korsakov composed this opera in the 1890s, the rumor of Salieri poisoning Mozart was already well established. It had gone from rumor to practically fact. A lot of this had to do with the unfortunate reality that at the end of his life, Salieri lived a long life, and by the end of his life, was probably suffering from some sort of dementia. He started to believe the rumor himself that he had poisoned Mozart, and in a delirious moment admitted to that fact. Then, as he became more conscious later on, he recanted that. But by the 1830s, when Pushkin wrote the play, he expanded upon this myth. And then in the 1890s, Rimsky-Korsakov wrote this opera, and by then it was already sort of a fact.
The stories have become more fantastical with more time, and as Mozart's fame has become more solidified. In this particular story, I think Mozart is, he's two different people. In the first scene, he is this light, bubbly, easygoing Mozart who is kind of what we think when we think of Mozart's like classical, earlier, younger pieces. And then there's scene two, Mozart, who becomes a much more serious, preoccupied, almost obsessed Mozart.
So I think that Salieri had a cordial relationship with Mozart. I think that they worked as colleagues. I think that a lot of times when you have two wonderful musicians, or in any genre, they try to make a rivalry out of people.
Rimsky-Korsakov is part of this grand tradition of Russian opera that we know so little about. This was premiered in 1897, and this is in the middle of his operatic, and so in the middle of his career. This is a work that shows already the mastery that Rimsky-Korsakov was known for. During his lifetime, he was known as a great teacher of orchestration, and you can hear this in this music, even though it's for a very small orchestra. So he'd already composed 5 operas and many, many symphonic works, all of which, by the way, the symphonic works are part of the core repertoire of the orchestral world. So we hear, even though it's a very small piece, we hear a master composer creating something that's totally unique in at least to what I am aware of in the world of opera. And in this particular opera, which is so fascinating, there's a real conversational aspect to it that I've really enjoyed getting to know. And he really creates a sound world of Mozart as looking back, sort of historically incorporating the music and the sound world of the classical era so well, in a way predating what Stravinsky did 40 years later with his neoclassical sound world.
The starting point for this design began when Stephen showed me the actual space. And I knew then that we had to deconstruct to the point of the scaffolding that's in this wonderful studio. If we're starting in such an ordered place, every time Mozart comes on, he pulls apart Salieri's mind just a little bit more. So we want to see that visually as the production goes on. When we created, Stephen and I talked, and we created this little mind palace, this very structured, ordered place for Salieri to be, and then bring Mozart to life. And each time he brings Mozart to life, it's to act as a foil, act as somebody to speak to and connect with on thoughts that have been going through his head at the end of his life. Salieri is such a square human. Everything is organized and in these boxes that he's decided they go in. And I wanted to play with that for Mozart. I wanted to make him much more circular in nature and sort of poking fun at Salieri's squareness and reframing his idea of what it is to be a craftsman or a composer. The really fun thing about these squares that you see on set are that they are filled with Salieri's actual manuscript, reproduced and then blown up in size, so that he's surrounded by his Requiem, Salieri's Requiem.
In conversation with our fantastic director, Fenlon, she wanted to have a little bit more insight into the character of Salieri and what, at least in this play by Pushkin and the libretto, would paint a picture of jealousy, of awe, of wanting to really understand what was happening with Mozart's music. So we both decided to incorporate more of Mozart's Requiem, which is quoted within the opera. And so we decided to use fragments from other movements. In the opera itself, we hear the intro at the beginning of the Requiem, but you will also hear a little snippet of the Dies Irae, as well as the Lacrimosa. And I think it really does add to the understanding of the character of Salieri as we see him in this opera.
My friends that grew up in Russia, I'm not sure if people may know the pianist Tamara Sanakidze. She and one of my teachers at Juilliard, Gina Levinson, introduced me to a lot of Russian repertoire in grad school. And I was so thankful to them for that. And the way that they know Pushkin is comparable to the way I grew up learning Toni Morrison or James Baldwin or Nikki Giovanni, wonderful black writers and essayists here in the United States, and they know it. Even Veronica here, the head of music, she knows Pushkin. They grew up with it, and so their relationship with Pushkin and his writings is vast and also intimate and means something to them.
I've studied Russian language for about 6 years now for my own personal education. It's a very personal thing. My wife is a native Russian speaker. She's Ukrainian, speaks both Russian and Ukrainian. And my in-laws, my mother-in-law speaks English probably about as well as I speak Russian. But my father-in-law doesn't speak English. And so when my wife and I when we were dating and we were getting a little more serious and I was going to meet her parents, I didn't want to just rely on her to translate the entire time I was there. So I said, maybe I should start picking up Russian. And I discovered a beauty of language and literature and music that I'd always only scratched the surface of. And when you really immerse yourself into a culture, you start to understand little bit by little bit what that art comes from.
We are so lucky to have two fantastic singers portraying these very complex roles. Sidney Outlaw portraying the role of Salieri, and Simon Barrett singing the role of Mozart. What makes this opera, again, so unique is the fact that both of these characters never sing with one another. They're singing to one another, and there's an interesting factoid of this opera. The great bass baritone Shaliapin, Fyodor Shaliapin, who premiered this role of Salieri, would sing this as a monodrama, but now we have these two great singers, and I'm just so happy that they bring their incredible, unique talents to this opera.
What's wonderful about working with both Sid and Simon is their consistency. Over time, we needed to build a very different language that they both spoke physically, and the consistency in bringing that to life with these circular rococo moves for Simon as Mozart, and with this very square, stodgy approach to moving around his space for Sid as Salieri.
Feeling Simon's energy on stage is the collaboration. That is the collaboration. He's supposed to be in my head as the character anyways. And so it's almost as if he's reading my mind and I'm reading his mind in real time so that it can look like he is a part of my mind to the audience.
So, I mean, Sid is an absolute dream to work with. He's such a pro. I admire him so very much. And he's so, he's done so much work on the text, on the character, that, it's easy for me. I look at him and I know what he's thinking, I know what he's saying, and I can just respond to that naturally. Because this is such a drama, the composer leaves so much for the performers to do themselves, rather than, in perhaps a Wagner score or a Puccini score, everything is written in very specifically into the music. Whereas in this, there's what they call melodic recitative. There's a lot of room for the performers to just have a conversation on stage. And so having someone like Sid, who is just so clear and so focused, has made these dramatic conversations just so enjoyable to go through.
I think what I'm most excited about is for our audience to spend 40 minutes with us in this new medium, something that is explorative and something that is expansive and something that is, after a year and a half of sitting at home in our own spaces, very much like Salieri, mind-opening, and gives us that feeling of digging back into opera again in a totally different way.
If I were coming to this piece without any prep or without any previous knowledge, I would come away and it would open my mind to what opera can be. In other words, you don't need a giant opera house with 3,000 seats and 5 million chorus members and an orchestra of 120 people to create opera. All you need is beautiful music and drama, and it can be so powerful on such a small scale as well. And that's what I love about this piece.
We are the truth tellers, and we are to speak through our art and let the audience decide how they want to interpret it, but it will give them 40 minutes away from the rest of the world. It will give them 40 minutes away from whatever was going on in their day and bring some type of musical joy to them. That's what we do. We're the truth tellers.